The Kurds are our tool for regime change and destabilizing the region, and the best thing we can do is get out now. But what about ISIS? Oh no, they're going to get out of the prisons. Well, hey, newsflash. The reason we're attacked is because we're over there. So the best thing we can do to stay safe is to leave. But what about betrayal? What about betrayal? Well, I'll tell you who we've betrayed. We have betrayed Turkey. So let's get into all of the details. Let's go over the latest, first of all. The fighting is going on. There is death on both sides. It is horrible. It is exactly what we predicted would happen, that they would go to war and people would die. Children have died on both sides. They've said that some Kurdish child was killed. The Turks have reported that a 9-month-old boy was killed on their side. It's war, guys. It's war, and it's not good. The Kurds are resisting. In fact, the Kurds have told their civilians to rise up and head to the border. They're actually telling their civilians to get in harm's way. So when we see this in the news, when we see that the Kurds are creating a human shield with their civilians, and this is the Kurdish militia, the YPG, which is the Kurdish freedom fighters. They have told their civilians to head to the border and face Turkey. So when we see the reports in the news that the civilians have been killed, that and this will create I guess like a PR crisis. I hate to call it that because it's way more awful than that. I mean, people are going to die. That's why war is so terrible. That's why we cannot engage in it anymore. That's why we cannot be promoting it or, this is just terrible. So, but you should at least know what is going on with that. So if they're telling their civilians to go and put themselves in harm's way, harm will come to those civilians, and it will be bad. It will be really bad. So people on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, are still upset over the fact that we, quote unquote, abandoned the Kurds, and that we're traitors to our allies. That we, and then there's some sentiment that we should have waited for them to be able to do a deal with the Syrian government, or at least be able to get some protection from the Syrian government. And we're going to go into that a little bit more here. But I do want to point out that. Who have we really abandoned? Who have we really pissed off in this whole entire thing? And I do want to draw your attention to what happened in 2014 when Obama originally got us into this and had us partnering with the YPG. So in 2014, Obama announced that this is what we were going to do. And the Turks were like, wait, what? You're going to be doing what? They were like, you realize that the YPG is just the fancy name for the PKK. It's the Syrian branch of the PKK. And the PKK and the Turks have been at war for pretty much 40 years. They've had 40,000 deaths between the two groups. There's been, even in 2016, the PKK bombed Istanbul, killing many civilians. And Ankara, they bombed all around. Of course, there's, the Turks have risen up and killed Kurds, and it's just been a really bloody battle for the last 40 years. So the YPG is the Syrian arm of the PKK. Now, they try to say that they're not, they try to have this branding thing of saying, no, we're different. See, we've got a different name. And they've changed their name a couple of times in order to rebrand, to try to distance themselves from looking like they're with the PKK. But people know that actually the leadership of the YPG is the exact same leadership as the PKK. They're under the same command, and the fighters actually go back and forth freely between the two different groups. So now the YPG says, look, we've never fired onto Turkey, and that very well might be true. But the fighters in the YPG, like yesterday, might have been in the PKK firing at Turkish Turkish armed forces, and then the next day they go and they join a unit at the YPG because their commanding officer told them to go do that, and they go do that, and then they say, wait, but I've never fired into you. I've never fired the Turkish forces. And then the Turkish forces are looking at them like, I just saw you yesterday in Turkey aiming at me. So that is why the Turks were like, wait a minute, you're going to do what? You guys are actually going to partner with the YPG. And Obama said, listen, he said this, and this is how he sold it to everybody. There were a lot of Republicans that were against this. Democrats were against, a lot of people were against us, saying, wait a minute, but Turkey's a NATO ally. And here we are turning around and telling Turkey, we're going to be arming the people you've been fighting but we got to do it. So Obama says this is going to be, quote, temporary, transactional, and tactical. That is what he said it was going to be. Temporary, transactional, and tactical. This is how he sold it. Lindsey Graham back in 2014 was saying this is the dumbest idea, going and arming the YPG and fighting with them to defeat ISIS. We also promised the Turks a few things over the years. Now, we promised the Turks that we would arm the Kurds, but that we would take those arms away. We didn't. We also told the Turks, we promised them that when we moved the Kurds into regions that were way too close to the Turkish border for Turkish comfort, we told them, listen, we're only going to move them in there to fight ISIS. Once ISIS is defeated, we will move the Kurds out of those regions. We did not. So who did we lie to? Who have we betrayed? Because when you look at it from a Turkish perspective, we really screwed them over. I mean, we armed the people they've been fighting for 40 years who've caused, between the two of them, 40,000 deaths. We told them we would arm them and take the arms away. Don't worry, we're not going to leave the arms with them. We have not done that. We told them, yeah, we're getting them close to your border, but we're going to move them back. We didn't do that. And then the Kurds gained a lot of strength, and the Kurds were able to take over pretty much that entire northern region of Syria, which was Turkey's worst nightmare. That's what they were saying to us. They were saying, wait a minute, if you do this, then they're going to gain a stronghold in that northern area of Syria, and that's a problem for us. That's a legitimate security concern for us. And the U.S. said, no, that's not going to happen. And guess what, guys? It happened. So when we talk about betrayal and who we betrayed, I think that we need to understand that in 2014, when we went into this to begin with, it was a disaster in the making to ally with two, we already had Turkey as an ally, whether you like it or not. Turkey's an ally. They're in NATO. Trump was right when he said they were there for World War II and all, so they were with us in Korea, and they've been there for us in Afghanistan. I mean, the Turks have been by our side for a long time, and so it was probably a bad idea to go and also ally with their arch enemy, because then all of a sudden you've got fighters, you've got Turkish fighters, and you've got Kurdish fighters, and they've all bonded with American fighters, and then you leave our military men, and women on the ground very torn emotionally. The military, the service members on the ground are saying that they cannot believe what we're doing, that we are abandoning. They feel like we are abandoning the Kurds. They've been fighting side by side with these guys for years. And all of a sudden they're having to pack up and say, sorry, man, I got to go. And that feels terrible for our boots on the ground. Absolutely terrible. They do not want to abandon people that were comrades with them. So but the government knew all along that this was a bad deal to begin with, and they wrote it out for this long, which is really surprising. Remember, it was supposed to be temporary, transactional, and tactical. That's what we kept selling. And the truth is that if it were up to the Kurds, we would be there forever. We would absolutely be there forever. There was a article done by Mother Jones. This was it's called Behind the Lines by Shane Bauer. And he went to Syria and he talked to the Kurds and did a interview with them. And this is what it says here. As the Kurdish border guard with the AK flips through my passport, his face brightens. Are you American? He asks. You are holy to us. The Kurdish people love Americans. He lights a cigarette and takes a drag. If it was up to us, we wouldn't let the Americans leave, he says. They would stay here forever. He tells me Turkish troops occasionally fire mortars at their positions, still small reminders of what awaits if U.S. forces withdraw. He goes on to say, will they leave us? Another man asks me. He is Arab. It's not clear, I say. 5 weeks earlier, Trump had announced he was pulling all U.S. troops out of Syria very soon, but he walked back his statement a few days later. It would be the last time he would do so. Maybe they will leave, the Arab man says. No, exclaims the wrinkled border guard. We have oil, so much oil. The Arab says, let them stay and take the oil. This interview is heartbreaking because for a couple of reasons. First of all, it shows that, look, we have to leave. We have to leave. We can't stay in Syria, right? So, but you've got these Kurds who have said they never want us to leave. If it were up to them, we would stay forever because they don't want the Turks to come in through the border like they're doing right now. So there never was going to be a good time to do this. There never was going to be a good time because a good time to them was never. So the other thing that this shows is obviously everybody knows we're there for the oil. Even the Kurds know we're there for the oil. So they're saying, well, we'll give you some oil. How about some oil? You want some oil? I know that's what you guys want. Stick around. I mean, that is just, come on. What are we doing? What are we doing? So it creates this inevitably heartbreaking situation that we made promises to Turkey, we made assurances to Turkey, and we absolutely betrayed Turkey on this. And so I don't blame Turkey when they've said, enough is enough. Enough is enough. We're going in. You guys have failed us over and over. You've made promises to us, and you failed us. And we're your ally. We've been with you through war after war after war, and you keep failing us. So I don't blame Turkey for saying enough is enough. Now, Erdogan did say to Europe, he says, don't criticize what I'm doing by going into Syria. Otherwise, you're going to get these 3.5 million Syrian refugees. So remember, Turkey has actually absorbed more refugees than any other country. And for them, it has to be temporary. They cannot absorb 3.5 million refugees. I mean, imagine. And so Turkey is saying to Europe, now people, the way they frame this in the news is that they're threatening. But ultimately, Turkey's just saying, look, it's one or the other, right? I mean, we can't keep them here. So we either take them home and you guys shut up about it, or I give them to you. So if you're going to complain about me trying to take them home, then you need to take them. So, of course, Europe said, well, okay, we can't take 3.5 million refugees. So Turkey's like, okay, then. So what their plan is, that's also not really being talked about in the news for whatever reason, is Turkey has proposed that they will take about 1.5 million Syrians. They're going to put them into that safe zone where the Kurds are right now. Now, the Kurds weren't always originally there. The Kurds during this conflict have taken those regions. So this is not like places where, they've been forever and ever, and now we're encroaching on Kurdish land. The Kurds actually took many of these areas from Arabs. They actually forced many Arabs out of those areas. It's a very complex issue where it's, nobody's a good guy and nobody's a bad guy. It's war. It's just all around bad. So, the Kurds had taken over Arab areas, forced Arabs out. The Turks had gone in and forced Kurds out of areas. It's war. And so now that the Turks are going in, what they've promised is that they're going to build every Syrian refugee a home with a garden for free. So they can go back home to Syria. They are Syrian after all. They'll build them a community, give them all homes and gardens. And that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. We like refugees. We want to support refugees. If the Turkish government is going to give them homes with gardens, that's a good thing. But it happens to be in the region that the Kurds want and that they've taken control over, which they've illegally taken control over from Assad, right? Syria is Syrian, and basically the Kurds have been, the Kurdish fighters, I should say, not Kurdish people are different from these separatists. So these separatists have taken this region and they put it under their control, including some Arab towns that are not Kurdish. They're also under Kurdish control right now. So again, it's a giant mess. But I think the big point that we need to understand with this is that we made a lot of promises to Turkey. And if there's anybody we betrayed, because we've never made promises to the Kurds. We've always said it was temporary, transitional, tactical, transactional, right? We've always said these things. The Kurds knew that we were not going to stay forever. That was never a promise that we made for them. We never said we would stand bodyguard for them from the Turks. We never made those promises. In fact, we made the opposite promises. And we made Turkey a lot of promises, and we didn't keep those promises. So if we're going to scream about betrayal, I think we need to be honest about it. The people we betrayed were the Turks. You might not like the Turks. You might like the Kurds better. A lot of me, I like what the Kurds stand for. I do like the Kurds a lot, but we got to be honest. So another thing that we need to also be honest about is what we're still doing there. So apparently Trump has moved the troops back. So he didn't get rid of he didn't send the troops home, which is where they should be right now. He instead moved the troops back. Because ultimately the U.S. does not really want to leave Syria because we want to continue to try to effect regime change against Assad. And we certainly don't want the Iranians who are allied with Assad to continue to get a stronghold in the region. So we are still there. One of the reasons why we've remained there all these years, even though it was supposed to be temporary, is because ultimately we tried to effect regime change against Assad, and we were allied with the Kurds in order to get that done. We were also allied with the Kurds to try to keep Iran from getting a stronghold. What we don't want, what the government doesn't want, is for Assad to be able to get control over his whole country. So if the Kurds have control over regions, a giant chunk of Syria, especially the real oil-rich area of Syria, then, it's a real problem for Assad. And it has been, because actually the Kurds were taking that Syrian oil and they weren't allowing, we weren't, because we were partnered with the Kurds, we weren't allowing that Syrian oil to go to Syria, because remember, we have an oil embargo on them. So what the Kurds were doing were selling all that oil to Israel. So we have been in the way. We have been using the Kurds as allies to effect regime change against Assad. We've been using the Kurds as allies to keep Iran at bay and allowing Iran to grow in strength as well. And that's not what we stand for here on this show. We definitely against regime change wars and wasteful wars and wars we don't need to be in. And quite frankly, this is the easiest one out of all of them to get out of. So if you're not screaming to get out of this right now, then I am extremely skeptical. Because are we or are we not against regime change wars? And this right now, being partners with the Kurds, is exactly what we're doing in Syria. We're there with them as allies in order to effect a regime change and in order to destabilize the region and in order to strong arm and mean mug Iran. So if we are consistent in our beliefs that we are against regime change, then we need to be saying to the U.S. right now, it is time to go. We do not need to be there anymore. The Kurds can take care of themselves. They've got themselves in the middle of this thing with Turkey. They've been at it for a long time. We're not going to be the ones to solve it. We don't need to be in the middle of it. We have got to go. And the longer we're there is just the longer that we're in the Middle East creating a problem. Now, we're creating a problem for many, many reasons. But one big reason I want to point out, because a lot of people now are screaming saying, oh, but the Kurds say they can't hold on to those ISIS fighters and they're going to break out of prison. Two things. First of all, the Kurds have been threatening us with releasing the ISIS prisoners. They threatened this back in December when Trump first said he was going to leave. They said, oh, okay, if you leave, we're releasing these prisoners. And they've kind of done it again now, saying, well, we won't be able to, we're not going to be able to guard those prisons if we have to go and fight Turkey, which I'm sure is true. But you know what? So the ISIS fighters get out. First of all, most of them are women and children. They're the family members of the ISIS fighters. And secondly, we are not less safe if those fighters get out. That is really not our problem, guys. It really isn't. Because guess why we get attacked all the way over here in America, way far away, 7,000 miles away from the conflict over there, from where ISIS even is trying to get a stronghold. We're 7,000 miles away. We're attacked because they want us out. That's what they want. Al-Qaeda attacked us on 9/11 because they want us out of the region. And ISIS, when they commit terrorist attacks against us, it's because they want us out of the region. They do not want Western influence in the Middle East. Iran, we got a problem with Iran right now because Iran is angry that we spent so much time in their nation, toppling their government and controlling their government and calling the shots in their country. So that's why there was the revolution in 78, 79. And that's why we have a beef with them. It's because they're angry that we've gone over there in their part of the world and we've tried to control them. So look, the best thing we can do to remain safe is to leave. That's it. We got to go. We've got to go. And if the ISIS fighters get out, that is the Kurds and Turkey and Syria's problem. And Russia has been fighting ISIS very effectively over there. Iran is over there as well. There's plenty of other nations over there to fight ISIS. We do not need to be the ones to do it. So this whole threat of these ISIS fighters maybe getting out, guys, the best thing we can do if we want to remain safe is to leave. We've got to go. We have got to go. Also, let me see here. So the Kurds, they're a tool for regime change, destabilizing the region, and we just cannot remain there. We cannot stay there and help them do that. We can't do that. not really, we're having them do it alongside us. I mean, people want to say, well, we're using the Kurds. That's not really true. The Kurds also have that same agenda. They also want to, carve out that land away from Syria. They're also, so it's not just in our interest that we want to topple Assad or keep Iran at bay. It's also in their interest. It is a common interest, which is why we were a natural ally with the Kurds. We all kind of wanted the same things: defeat ISIS, destabilize, topple Assad. But you know what? We can't do that anymore. It's bad. We got to go. Let's see what else. There's so that, I think, is, I'm trying to go through my notes here to see if there's anything else that I'm missing on this. I think I've said enough about it, but it is just, we've got to go. And I am really disappointed in most of people on the left, who, especially people who claim that they don't want war. There's a lot of people who say that I don't want war, but right, and we've got to, because this humanitarian crisis, or we're betraying people, or we're leaving people behind. If there was a clean exit from conflict, then then it would be easy. And, I say this as somebody who's dealt with this personally. My family is Vietnamese. Only half of my family was able to get out. The other half were left behind when the U.S. pulled out of that war. So I get it. I understand the consequences of leaving. I understand leaving people behind. I understand that. But you just have to do it. You just have to do it. So that's where we're at with this. And, people are still... I'm surprised that it's like me and Tucker Carlson and like Ron Paul, who are the ones that are like, yeah, time to go. So I'm disappointed that Trump has not fully pulled them out of the region. This is the easiest one to get out of. We went and did what we aimed to do with toppling ISIS, and now we can go. Afghanistan is another one that we need to get out of. That one's a little tougher because it's really hard to leave the people in the hands of the Taliban. But unfortunately, that's where we're at with it. And sometimes you have to go, and it's sad, and you have to leave people behind. And I understand. It's terrible. Okay, so that's the latest on that. And I will keep you posted. Please, if you would like to support this channel, I do appreciate it, because whenever I talk about these types of things, they get demonetized. Which sucks, because it's like they're not Fox News and CNN and MSNBC, they're all making a ton of money off of these topics, but I'm not allowed to. So I do appreciate your support. I do appreciate if you would subscribe and hit the bell. Thank you so much, and I'll keep you guys posted. Thanks for watching.